Janine came to me suffering from what's called baby bear syndrome. It's when you get hired in a junior position or supporting role, are really good at it, and then can never seem to break out of it. As Janine describes it, she gets pigeonholed and not given new opportunities because she's just so good at the thing they hired her to do. The other issue she's running into are these job descriptions that require team management experience. The problem is, as an executive assistant, she technically has never managed anyone, but non-technically, she's constantly managing everyone and everything. It's just not in, a formal capacity. So, how can Janine convince people that she has the skills to do the job, if not the title on her resume? Let's dive in.
I'm just recently unemployed, and so obviously my focus is right now is changing that status.
Mhm.
But I really would like maybe for once my job search to be and my objective to be one of finding a job that I'm actually not just good at, but enjoy, maybe, if that's possible. And to be valued for what I'm worth. I think that I get hired into roles where I get pigeonholed and not necessarily given opportunities to try other things because I'm so good at the thing that they hired me to do. And also, my previous role was as a chief of staff. And that's the first time that I've been in that role. I've been a support professional, though, for a very long time and found myself a lot of times in roles where I could probably tell the person I'm supporting how to do their job better. But trying to figure out how to make that next step because I think ideally I would like to be like a chief operating officer or a chief administrative officer. And making that leap from staff to C suite is where I feel stuck.
Okay. Okay. So you want to go from the support behind the scenes to the main stage.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Yeah. One of the things I wrote down leading into our call today was, how did we get here? This overqualified, underhired, underfulfilled. Are they not seeing you as qualified? Are you not seeing you as qualified? Is this a question of articulating your worth?
I think part of the problem is that I've had a very non-traditional path, right? So I originally started out, I wanted to be an attorney and change the world. I have a law degree
Mhm.
and never went into law.
Okay.
And so people hire me, they see I have a JD, but then they see a work history of someone who's been an EA, who's been in operations, and they can't. So I understand that is probably a little bit of the problem. But then I feel like when I start a job and I show them what I'm capable of, and everybody says, "Oh, what would we do without you?" And this is so great. I'm so glad you're here. But there's never any of that. You could also take this on, or maybe you might be good for this role when that chief operating officer role opens up
Mm.
or that chief of staff role opens up. I've never considered. And I think it's like they want me to keep doing what I'm doing and they could find somebody else to take on the other role. Where to me, it seems like when you value hiring an employee who's been working for you for several years to take on that role, as opposed to bringing in a stranger.
There's a thing that I remember learning about called baby bear syndrome. Have you heard that? Not that we need another syndrome. Baby bear syndrome. It's effectively when you are hired in a more junior capacity, it is extremely hard or can be hard to be seen beyond that capacity, even when you have all the things that it takes. They've seen it, but because you were in that junior role, they would rather take a chance on somebody who doesn't even know the company culture, doesn't have the institutional knowledge, simply because they come in with something else on their resume that's to this higher position. And I think my impression is that you are very good at what you do. And so to have you be promoted elsewhere would then mean a loss for them, for whoever you've been working for. They want to gatekeep you. So it's
Yeah.
this double-edged sword, right? Where you're valued, but undervalued at the same time. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. And not valued so much that they want me to actually grow. And
Hmm.
I don't know if hiring managers or supervisors or senior leadership sees that as how you value an employee. I don't feel like as many of them do as should. And it's trying to figure out how to make it clear that not only can I handle what you hired me for, but I'm looking for more. And I worked at a big four consulting firm, and I was able to move up from starting there as a temp to perm EA. I went into consulting. And then because I had my son,
Mhm.
I moved into an operations role there because I just couldn't keep up those hours and travel. And so somebody there took a chance on me, and I was able to move up and I proved myself. But I've found that since I've left there and prior to getting there, people aren't willing to take a chance. Nobody would hire me as a paralegal when I was looking for work after law school because I had my JD, and they were just like, you're going to get your
Mhm.
legal law license, you're going to pass the bar, and you're just going to quit.
Mhm.
I was like, so in the meantime, you don't want a paralegal who is actually an attorney who can maybe take some of the workload off for you? You don't want that? Okay.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of like short term, long term hedging that's happening on all ends. I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and it seems also in the next job that you had, you went from an assistant type role to a chief of staff. So you have proven time and time again that you can move up. So you actually maybe are doing more of what you would like to do, right? That momentum, it's not necessarily to the place that you want to be today. And we're going to talk about how to get there, but you have a great track record of leaping. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I think so, but it's taken a lot of pushing and networking and getting in the right ear on my part. And I know just being a good employee never gets you promoted. I'm all aware of that or whatever, but it just feels such a challenge to be hired when you want to do that stretch job, right? Like I want to stretch from being a chief of staff to being a chief operating officer. And the experience is there. It's all on my resume, but nobody's willing to give me a chance.
All right. So we want to get more into the operations. Do you know anyone who has gone from chief of staff to chief of operations or something close to that?
I do know one person who works in the public sphere, actually, who went from being chief of staff. She's now the executive director of the organization that she worked for. And I haven't had a chance to catch up with her because she's incredibly busy. But it's possible. I think that it's possible for you to do just about anything if you put your mind to it. I just seem to keep running into a wall and not being able to find the person again who's willing to give me the opportunity to make that change.
Okay. So first, I would make a massive spreadsheet where you're going to do a whole bunch of research on companies doing things that are interesting to you. They do not need to have an open job listing right now, but just who are the interesting people out there? Then take a look at who are the people there, either who have the job you want or something similar or in the department.
Mm-hmm.
Then click on their profile, see where did they used to work. Go add that to your spreadsheet. And then Google competitor companies to both the organization that you're looking at, but also to where this person used to look. Keep
Mm-hmm.
doing the same thing until you've collected maybe 50 targets. So if you keep looking at, all right, this is an interesting organization. Who works there? Where do they used to work? What's a competitor company to that? You look at that company, who works there in the job that you're interested in? Where did they used to work? What's a competitor company? You can get this really robust spreadsheet of people and places that you may not have even
Mm-hmm.
heard of before. Put that in one place. Then export your LinkedIn and all of your contacts. I want you to have them in one place. It's going to be tedious as hell, but it's totally worth it. Who are people that you are connected to? They may not have the jobs that you're interested in, but they know somebody who does. I would love it if you could craft, first of all, before you do any of outreach, we'll talk about updating your LinkedIn because they're all going to be looking at your LinkedIn. We want to make sure that it represents all the great accomplishments you've made. But the goal is to tap into your network and to try to get introductions to people to simply tell you about their path of what do I need to show in order to secure this position? What are your challenges in this position? What's the hard stuff? What are the things
Mm-hmm.
you dislike about what you do? Just so you know, based off of real information from real people, the story that you have to tell about yourself.
Right.
Because right now, when I look at your LinkedIn, I know that it is not showing the scope, the breadth, the stellar accomplishments that you've had, both as it relates to what you used to do, but more importantly, positioned to make you look ready for the next thing.
Mm.
So there's a lot of, I think, intel collection that needs to happen first to make sure that you are articulating yourself using the exact words that these people need to hear. That's why I
Mhm.
think there's a mismatch. We got to get a lay of the land of what are the words that people are using to describe what they do in operation capacities. Knowing that, then you reflect on, okay, what have I done? Where's the delta? Also, where is there a gap? Is there anything that I'm going to have to either overcome through experience? If so, we can talk about what that might look like. Or is this more of a storytelling, a transferable skill sort of thing? I can't tell you what that is until you do your research, but just know that's the first place to begin. And it doesn't require you, as of this moment, to reach out to anybody. It's just on the back end when you're looking at these people's LinkedIn's, how are they describing themselves? I think you'll be able to learn a lot from there. And then when you reflect on what have you used to do, what did you do in the past? That is pretty parallel, if not maybe the exact same thing, to be honest, because just because your title was chief of staff, that's a catch-all. You probably did quite a bit of what you would be doing moving forward in the operations capacity. So
Mhm.
now, knowing where you want to go, you can say, let me pick out these experiences that I've had and put bullet points of the quantified impact on the business in my LinkedIn. So when people are looking at me, at all my materials, they're really seeing the operations aspect of my chief of staff role.
Yeah,
Is that all resonating for you?
it is. Funny thing is, and the thing that's been discouraging me is the more I talk to people in my network, the more competing information I get about my LinkedIn profile and also about my resume.
Okay.
A lot of recruiters that I work with, having a resume that lists that sort of lays out your skills is better. And some say that a resume that talks about your accomplishments is better.
Oh,
That's
I
more
sort of think it's
accomplished.
either or slash both of them, but it's always through the quantified impact on the business. Because here's the thing, you don't want to seem generic, which means you don't want to say generic things. So it's not a copy and paste of here's what I did, but here's what I
Mhm.
did and how it impacted the business bottom line. Only you can tell that story. And so knowing money saved, money made, and all the ways in which these companies you worked for, these organizations, how did they define it based off of your job responsibilities? What role did you play in contributing to that? So when I see the last job you had, it shouldn't just be responsible for X, Y, and Z, but responsible for X, Y, and Z that resulted in A, B,
Mhm.
and
Yeah. Quantifying that I find is a little difficult
so
because
that's
my role doesn't I'm not selling anything. I'm not raising money. I'm not
you
bringing
support.
in engagements. I support people who do those things,
And that's
but
what's
I wasn't.
so awesome about I fucking love working with people who are chief of staff and executive assistants because you see everything behind the scenes. You see what it takes to get shit done. What's awesome about that is when you reflect on what, who you supported, instead of now you thinking about how did you bring in or save money, how did they bring in or save money?
Mhm.
So start there. Probably falls into buckets and supported X person who did Y things that resulted in Z. Approximate is fine. You do not need to be perfect. It could even be contributed to supported the person who was responsible for a budget of $1 million.
Mhm.
Like, we just need you to establish a paper trail of how you
Yeah.
were connected to the business
Mhm.
bottom line. When you start to chart it back like that, what's so funny is you're a lawyer, like imagining you're going to trial or something and you have to present a case. Not that this was the kind of law that you were interested in, but imagine it was. So you go in and you're like presenting this case of how you're going to connect this person to the crime, right? But right now it's not obvious how, I don't know if this analogy works, like, but how we can't say for sure that like they were there at the scene of the murder, but we got some clues. Like again, that paper trail, You
Yeah.
have access to that. I know it's going to be a little hard because you're not currently working at these places. So you're really going to have to remember, starting with, what are some high points for me? When I think back on this job, what are some things that come to mind that I really enjoyed working on or that I was really proud of? Start there, but we want to still compare it to this future role that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
yes, we're going to the past, but we need to be going back and forth between understanding what future roles need to see from you. So filter out which of these best examples from the past support where you want to go in the future. So you're going to
Yeah.
have that back and forth. Imagining if you were to go before a board of advisors, let's say, and to defend why should they continue to keep you on, or
Mhm.
the work that you did, there had to be a defense to it, right?
Sure.
Having to work on
Yeah.
a certain thing had to have led to the bottom line. Otherwise, you wouldn't work there anymore. So the business owners, the bosses, they know how you fit into the business bottom line. Heck, they're putting a margin on your paycheck, right? So whatever
Yeah.
they're paying you, they're profiting off of you. So you are making more money for the company than your salary is worth. Otherwise, again, you don't work there anymore. There's downsizing. So
Yeah.
they all know that. You absolutely have to know that. And this information not only will help you get your next job, it will help you get your raise. It will help you get your promotion. It will help what opportunities to either raise your hand for or even better, create so that you get what you want at these jobs. Since clearly no one is going to just give it to you. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you're doing all the right things, but you're very tired. So we need to be doing this as strategically and efficiently as possible, especially if it's in conversation with people doing interesting things. It should give you energy. You go, okay, yeah, you just explained to me what you do in operations. I absolutely see now in everything I've done how I contributed to the operations. And in that, we made processes more efficient and therefore saved time, which then allowed people to raise money. There is an absolute domino effect to the work that you did. So knowing how you
Mhm.
impacted your boss, who impacted their boss, who impacted another department, could really do
So,
a whole spider web out from just Janine's work to the business bottom line.
mhm.
Once you map that out for yourself, you're going to feel really empowered. And then you're going to tell that story on your LinkedIn. I think you should make a personal website. But tell me how if all this is feeling overwhelming or where you're at in this.
No, it's a little what you said is like being a little tired of repackaging myself over and again when it's time to find a new role or to make a transition. And I don't think like and I'm sure that everyone has their own stance on this, but with the development of AI, especially when it comes to writing out your resume or changing your LinkedIn or anything that's on that vein, or even just applying to jobs, like so many ways that they're pushing for you to use AI in order to help you do that, which I don't entirely trust.
Mhm.
But knowing that I send my resume to some place on LinkedIn, what are the odds of my resume being noticed as it currently stands, right? What, 10%, 15% chance? If it doesn't have the right keywords or it
Mhm.
doesn't have what they're looking for, what they're filtering before they even go through starting to look at resumes. And I wonder, in addition to myself, how many other wonderful candidates are being overlooked.
I would not even apply cold for anything right now. I think you're going to have a much higher chance of getting your next role through your network. Quick question for you. Assuming that in the places you used to work, you ended on good terms,
Mhm.
can you go back through who you're connected to there, see where they're currently working, and if any of them are in places that are of interest to you?
Oh, yeah, I'm already in contact with a few people in my network that I used to work with, that I used to work for. I'm in contact with recruiters. I'm still doing some cold job applying because why not? Because I have the
Sure.
time on my hands.
Okay.
But I'm covering the gamut with
Mhm.
respect to all of the things that I could be doing, and also considering even other roles that I might be interested in. And the last role I was in in the nonprofit space, which was relatively new to me. So I've been also checking in on like Idealist and places like that about nonprofit roles that aren't necessarily in the mainstream.
Okay, cool. With where you want to go, I mentioned the delta between what you've done in the past and where you want to go.
Mhm.
Is there any gap in experience that you have?
The place that I keep running into a wall is with management. I've not managed a team of people, and people will job descriptions will say, and hiring managers will say, have you managed a team? Have you managed people? I said, I've managed all kinds of people. I've just never been assigned anybody to hire to manage because I've been supporting people, right? In an EA role, in a chief of staff role, you're supporting everyone else. You're not managing other people, but you manage everyone in order to accomplish your job and in order to get the person that you're working for all of the things that they need done. Project managing and level managing up with the senior leadership team. Like, I manage all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but because it's not a head count, because it's not an ET, a particular unit of people that I'm managing, it's always blanketed over. That's not enough management experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to throw out some suggestions that I'm not necessarily saying you do them, but two ways to overcome this. Let's just say you took a management class or got a certificate. Again, I'm not saying you should do this because I'm not a fan of anybody spending money that they shouldn't be spending, but
Mm,
there's that. So even just looking up something like relatively inexpensive or quick, also knowing that's a thing that people are looking for, I would make sure that on your LinkedIn and your resume, if you can say managed X, Y, and Z thing. So maybe you were not saying I managed a 16-person team because maybe that's not totally accurate. You can
mhm.
speak to a lot of the things that you just shared with me about the management that you did.
Yes. Yeah.
So making sure that like those words are at least there. Another thing to do is, and this is advice for anybody who wants to make somewhat of a leap and just isn't getting there. What are the kind of bridge opportunities, right? The things in between. So, who would be more willing to give you a chance? Could there be a smaller organization with a 3-month engagement, right? Like a thing that's just a way for you to get that management experience, and it's with a person with maybe a smaller budget. Therefore, you're not signing on for a full year, but you're coming in to do more as a consultant. So to just think
Right.
a little bit more creatively about ways in which you can give yourself that experience and get it on your resume. I would say
Right.
those three things, right? So recapping, quote, management certificate or class or whatever. There's a lot of stuff out there. Putting those words of managed X, Y, and Z things on your resume and LinkedIn that speak to things you would be managing moving forward, if not in that professional or official capacity. And then
Mhm.
third, what's that like interim bridge opportunity so that you can confidently say, yes, I did. And here's how I did it. I though would really try to get those conversations going with people who have that role you want and to have them guide you with what do I really need to say to show that I'm ready for this? And I think it does boil down to what are the things that trip up this person? What is hard about what they do? Because that's the learning curve. And so being able to really speak to that proactively with the materials that you have, but then also in the interview. And also, what's the asset to having somebody who has not technically done this role before? You bring a fresh perspective. Also, having been chief of staff, my understanding of that is you really see a lay of the land. There's probably a lot of perspective that you bring beyond just being, quote, an outsider, but that
Yeah.
chief of staff eye, how does it help? How would it help you? How could it help you in operations?
Mhm.
You feel like you can speak to that sort of confidently and specifically now.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're as a chief of staff, you're responsible for project management across all of the verticals of the organization. So though someone is no one is directly reporting to me, they are responsible to me to let me know the status of all of the projects and events and engagements that are going on because I have to report to the executive director. And he will impart to me information that I then, as his proxy, will go back and share with other people, and it will affect the progress and the process under which they will complete those projects. There's a lot of that going on, but technically, no one reports to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this conversation in many an interview, and they're just, okay, yeah, that's interesting. So you've never actually managed anyone. You weren't responsible for someone's performance review or anything like that. And so the answer to that question at the end of the day is no. And then it's like a non-starter.
But yeah, I know. So it's like you could do this amazing job telling your story, but it still doesn't matter, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Everything is like I've had great interviews, the conversation goes well, and even in my last role, that conversation came up during my interview, and I was actually interviewing for a chief operating officer role, and I wound up getting chief of staff because they said I didn't have enough management experience.
What does it take to get promoted? Here's the problem though. You're trying to get a promotion and also making a move, like a pivot and a promotion, right? Whereas most people, they're either just trying to get promoted within their current kind of linear progression.
I don't feel like it's a pivot. Any chief of staff, any EA, any operations, and I have worked in operations. I had an operations jobs for several years. I am just taking those skills and putting them under a different umbrella. Everything that a EA does, an operations person can do.
Mhm.
And I have had the additional experience of being in operations, handling HR situations, vendor management, onboarding and offboarding, budgets, you name it. So I'm not really pivoting in terms of skill. I'm
Mm-mm.
pivoting in terms of title
Mm-hmm.
and seeking a promotion.
And the only thing that's holding you back, it really sounds like, is being responsible for the
Right. Like
performance of another.
do I need to go work at my local Wendy's for 6 months?
I know, right? I'm like, I'm not to be like, you need to lie, but I'm about to be like, what can we manufacture here? Because this is so outrageous. You can be taught this. Actually, I think everybody should be taught this. I don't think it's an innate skill at all. And I think most people managers are terrible because that's probably A, they're not being trained, and B, they're probably doing too much. There should just be
Yeah.
somebody who manages people and then somebody who actually does the work, not work and management.
No,
I will.
and being a chief of staff and any other chief of staffs who might be listening will understand this. You have to develop a relationship with everyone
Yeah.
at your organization. You cannot be unliked and be a successful chief of staff. And that takes a lot of management. It takes learning people's personalities, learning their work styles, learning how they communicate best in order to get what you need with ease. And I can tell you for a fact that my manager definitely didn't know how to do that.
I'll tell you a quick story of somebody I coached, and this is going to relate to you. When there's a problem that you just cannot get over, like there isn't anything you could really do. I gave you some solutions that will help assuage maybe some concerns on their end, but this is a bit of an intractable issue. Like the fact of the matter is, if being responsible for the performance of another person specifically is a thing that they need to see, and you have not yet done that, you're like in a rock between a rock and a hard place here, or chicken and an egg, or whatever analogy you want. Like somebody needs to give you a chance. How do we convince them to give you a chance? This client I had, she's a graphic designer. She was applying to a financial firm, and it was the interviews, going through all the interviews, she gets to the last interview, and it's between her and this one other guy, and then there was a group interview. And they had straight up told her, they're like, this other guy, he has had the exact experience that we need. He's worked for a financial services firm before. You haven't. So they told her disadvantage already. So we had a
Right.
session, and I said, you will never have what he has, which is you didn't work at a financial firm. But let's dig into what you have that he doesn't have, which is she had personal finance interest. She had a personal story of getting into debt and then self-educating, digging herself out of it. So it was leading more with the heartstrings story.
Right.
She got the job. So it was like, we can't compete with the rules that have been set as they've presented themselves. We've
Yeah.
lost. Let's change the rules. I think we need to just really hammer home a couple of other things on your end. what you just shared, give you the transcript for this, because you talking about knowing people's personalities, being liked. I'm sure there's beyond being liked, because you can't just be like, you can't be a people pleaser to get things done. So how do you manage, right? Being liked, respected, with also setting boundaries, expectations, scopes, juggling personalities. There's probably a lot of diplomacy, like really articulating this people skills that are required to do this job. So knowing on their end, it's important for you to have, quote, managed others. Get more specifics. And by getting more specifics, you already know the specifics, just write them down for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why is that important to them? What is the outcome they hope is achieved by you having that experience? Speaking to that exactly through your examples that you have will show them title doesn't matter as much as they may think that it does, or they want it to be. So yes, you are doing extra work here and telling your story, but it's getting more to the why this is important than just a simple, oh, it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be like, well, you tell me why it's important. No, because Janine, you already know. So you can proactively say, listen, I'm going to be honest here. Technically, I have not managed a person on a team. But when you look at what I've actually done, I've done so much more than that, because I've managed whole departments and how they communicate with each other or whatever. You'll figure out exactly what to say. And you're going to say,
Yeah.
in that what I've done, here's what I've learned about what it takes to be a great people manager. So now you're going to talk about your philosophy of doing this work. And then by the end of that, they're going to go, holy shit, she could teach a master class on this. She's probably doing people management better than our own managers are.
Right.
So it's acknowledging the elephant in the room, but then saying, let me show you how I've done it, but also not just believe me, trust me. No, I think when you demonstrate what you've learned out of it, how it's made you better at your job, you're going to be bringing those learnings with you to this next organization. They now get to benefit from that.
Yeah.
And also maybe even say, listen, in a way, I'm glad that I haven't only managed a small team or a team, because that'd be pretty one dimensional. I've gotten to have my fingers in lots of pots over here. I get to have a bird's eye view. I've also gotten to see great managers. I've learned from the best. I've also seen what I want to avoid or do differently.
Right.
I'm managing those managers. This is where we get that trial lawyer. I don't know if that's what you wanted to do, but like, we are building a case here. And if we cannot win according to their definition as they've presented it, we have to change the game. Is that resonating?
Yes. Yeah. As
And
long as they're willing to listen.
I'd actually think it'd be great if you put it on LinkedIn. You put it on LinkedIn, you made a little Squarespace website. Really, because I'm looking at your LinkedIn, it doesn't have those bullet points. And I want you to just blow people away with both the like scope, the breadth, the width, but also the depth of what you've seen, what you've participated in. I'm sure there were some big budgets involved. Heck, start with big budgets and big personalities. I've dealt with them all. Here's how you juggle it. And I would love it if people walked away from their interaction with you and they again were like, she can teach a masterclass on how to handle shit.
Yeah.
And then they go, hold on. Our conundrum now is we've got a traditional candidate who've gone up in the ranks of operations. They checked all the boxes. And the next logical step is this. But then we've got this wild card candidate over here who came in from a different direction. Make it hard for them to say no to you. And
Right.
knowing that you are coming in with such a different story, yes, that could be an obstacle. It can also be the very thing that gets you hired.
I think when it works well for me and when it doesn't, it's I've been stuck and have in certain circumstances had to settle for the job that I took.
That's where I want you with that research you're doing, where you're making sure that all the people that you're talking to are good people, that these are good organizations. So you're getting into the door of folks who are going to support you and champion you. So you're doing that research on your back end. I also, again, want you to be really proactive in this story. So not just waiting for the right person to talk to you so that you have the opportunity to tell your story, but you be front and center in your about on your LinkedIn. big budgets, big personalities, whatever. Own your story and put that shit out there. And then when
Yeah.
people hear you talk to you, be like, I have risen up in the ranks. Like I started as an assistant and I went from here to there because I care about the organization. I care about getting things done. Also, you demonstrating your passion for operations, like why this pivot between you and me? It could be about money, and that's fine. But you'll spin it as I am making a bold choice to do this because I know the impact it can have on an organization. So again,
Mhm.
it's not this rising in the ranks and it's the next logical step. No, I put a lot of thought and intentionality into this choice. And so they
Yeah.
know you're going to be bringing all that energy, and it's you very much upfront bringing it. So not waiting for anybody to ask you, but you getting connected to people and saying, I'm so jazzed to be in this place of my life where I am now going down this direction, whatever. Like we can talk more specifically about tactics depending on who you're speaking to. But I do get worried that there might be some passiveness or like a waiting that we don't have time for anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, ironically, even though I haven't necessarily always taken a job that I really wanted, I have always moved up. So I would say in terms of income, which has
Mm-hmm.
been mind-boggling to me, honestly, because maybe 13 years ago, I was just starting out and being radically underpaid at 30K.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only moved up from there, and it made a really big jump in the last few years. So it's
Hell,
for
that's
some
good.
reason that
That's a huge
for some
story.
reason for some reason that hasn't been an impediment. Finding the job I want to do as opposed to the job I can do, that
Mm-hmm.
has been the impediment.
Um, for the job that you want to do, can you imagine that in your mind's eye? What is there a certain cause or kind of company, or how close do you feel to, does it matter what the company does, or do you have a dream company?
My dream circumstance, I would be a chief operating officer at a nonprofit that does impactful work, and whether or not it's necessarily for something that's like near and dear to my heart, I do feel very passionately that nonprofits, all of them, do good work in so many different ways, and it's hard not to feel satisfaction in the work that you do because you're not making monies for money's sake, which is a lot of my background is in finance, and that was like at the end of the day that's all I ever felt. There's literally a sheet that can show me the bottom line here, but I don't feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like there's an impact worth telling anybody about. But
Mm-hmm.
now that now that I've worked in nonprofit, I can see the outcome of the work that we've done,
Yeah.
and I want to tell everyone.
The good news is with nonprofit, you're going to be paid less. So they're more willing to take a chance, quote, chance, although I don't think there's any actual taking a chance on you. But you're going to have, I would imagine, maybe a slightly easier time getting a yes at a nonprofit than a for profit. I see that you
You
chaired the alumni council of your Ivy League. By the way, my wife went to the school that you went to.
whoop,
Have you
whoop.
leveraged the shit out of them? For the best way to leverage it would be to say, here are my targets, here are my dream companies. So you're giving people specifics. I'm
Mm,
looking for a role in operations, ideally at the level of whatever, director or whatever. I know asking for an introduction for a job is a big ask, but maybe somebody who's doing something akin to what I'm looking for, where I could have a conversation, just a couple of questions I have about best ways in which I can present myself and be able to show them I can do the job on day one or whatever. You've
mhm.
already invested time into networking and community building for yourself. Go back to those people, go and leverage them and come with those targets. You already got really specific with me about what you want to do and the space in which you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the one thing that I find LinkedIn to be good for is it shows you your connections. And so if there is ever an opportunity where there's a connection where I feel like I can go to them, we're like first or second connection, I take advantage of it. I'll send them an email in mail
Mhm.
and say to them, hey, what do you know about this company? Or if they work there themselves, hey, what do you think about working there? And I gotta get into some questions. And if there's somebody that I'm a little closer to, I'll say, hey, I'm going to apply to this job. Would you refer me? I am not shy about doing that.
Good, good. I think your first order of business, besides doing the research, that like creative research of bunch of organizations that could be interesting to you, is
Mm,
to get your story, particularly in the about for LinkedIn, You could put in your title, by the way, seeking, I could say chief of staff of where you used to work, that's fine, but I would say seeking role in operations or something like that, so that you're
Mhm.
not pigeonholed into chief of staff and you also come up in searches for recruiters. Add those bullet points of how you impacted business bottom line on your LinkedIn and on your resume. But it has to, again, be filtered through its relevancy to operations or where you want to go next. And then really own your proactive story of how you do have not only management experience, you actually have better than management experience. Here's how and what you've learned.
Got it.
I think all of these things are going to get you into a much better place. It will come through introductions. I know that there wasn't much time. We're getting up on time and there's so much more we could talk about, but tell me anything else you want to cover or me to clarify. I was probably saying a lot of things you're already doing, but I hope that I gave like tangible next steps that were just a
No,
seed at
I've
least.
I've definitely been neglecting my LinkedIn, so I have to put some time in there, rethink my about, definitely clean up my bullet points. It's been just like how people will sometimes how I've been treating my LinkedIn.
I used to too until I saw how powerful of an engine it is to land business. I know that's me speaking as a business owner, but it
Yeah,
truly, because it's your home on the internet in a way.
sure. Okay. I think that's probably going to be like the biggest thing that I need to take on and still keep hitting the pavement in terms of my networking and reaching out to people and taking another look at my resume and making sure that it's reflecting management indirect or in the indirect way that can be directly applied to direct management.
Exactly. And
So
even using the
say
word
that 3 times fast.
managed budgets, managed. It's like, how many times can I say managed on this document? Oh, but you
Yes.
needed me to give a review to somebody? Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Janine, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. This is really helpful.
Appreciate you.